Have you ever had a moment where something completely unexpected happened, and it changed the course of everything? Something so wild that it left everyone talking? Well, let me take you back to a day that started like any other but quickly spiraled into chaos, confusion, and, of course, a viral moment I never saw coming. It all began when I decided to wear a mini skirt, a simple fashion choice, right? But what followed was anything but ordinary. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, and I had plans to visit my family. Nothing special, just the usual hangout at my sister's house with my nephew, who was around 14 at the time. We hadn't spent much time together lately, so I was looking forward to catching up. Now, I wasn't dressing to impress anyone that day. I just wanted to wear something comfortable, something I hadn't worn in a while, a cute little mini skirt paired with a casual top. It wasn't too flashy or revealing, it was just me, feeling a bit carefree. But when I arrived at my sister's house, the vibe was already different. Everyone was gathered in the living room, chatting and laughing. My nephew was playing video games, not paying much attention to anything else. I didn't think much of it until I walked into the room and caught a glimpse of his expression. His eyes widened in a way that made me pause. It wasn't the kind of reaction I was expecting, and I could feel the tension building in the air. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe I was imagining things. But then, my nephew, in the most awkward way possible, blurted out something that made everyone stop talking. His words, innocent, but loud enough for everyone to hear, sent a shockwave through the room. I could see the confusion on the faces around me, and then the laughter that followed. But it wasn't the kind of laughter you'd expect from a harmless comment. It was more like nervous laughter, mixed with disbelief. What did he say? Well, that's where the story takes a strange twist. His comment wasn't just about my outfit, but it was linked to something much deeper, a layer I wasn't prepared for. The moment he spoke, my sister's face went pale. My mom looked uncomfortable. And I was left standing there, not knowing whether to laugh it off or dive deeper into the conversation. As the day went on, the tension between my nephew and the rest of the family grew. It wasn't just his comment that had everyone on edge, it was what followed. The things that started coming to light about him, about us, and about family secrets I had no idea existed, all started unfolding in the most unexpected ways. It became clear that this wasn't just a random awkward moment, this was something much more complicated. There was a certain energy in the room that I couldn't quite put my finger on, and it wasn't long before I realized my nephew's comment had opened a door to a much bigger issue. Something that, once out in the open, couldn't be easily closed again. So, what did my nephew say? How did his comment lead to a viral moment? And what did it have to do with something far more shocking that no one could have predicted? Stay tuned, because in the next part of the story, things get even more intense, and the twists and turns will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. As the afternoon wore on, I couldn't shake the strange feeling in the air. My nephew, who usually had no problem speaking his mind, was uncharacteristically quiet. But I could feel his eyes lingering on me, as if he was trying to figure something out, or maybe he was processing something that he hadn't quite understood himself. It was unnerving. The more I tried to act like everything was fine, the more I could sense the underlying tension building. It wasn't until later that evening, when everyone had gathered around the dinner table, that things really started to take a turn. The conversation seemed innocent at first. We were all chatting about the usual stuff, work, school, weekend plans, when suddenly, my nephew broke his silence. He looked at me, and in the most casual tone, said something that stopped everyone mid-bite. "Isn't it weird when someone dresses a certain way and it just feels off?" he asked, his voice almost too nonchalant. There was a pause, and then the room went dead quiet. My sister, who was sitting across from me, immediately shot him a look. Her expression was a mix of confusion and concern, and I could tell that she was trying to figure out where he was going with this. But before anyone could respond, he continued, his eyes fixed on me. "I mean, don't you think it's a little strange when someone who's supposed to be family dresses like they're trying to get attention?" The words hung in the air like an uncomfortable cloud, and for a moment, I thought I might just disappear into the floor. My heart started racing, but I didn't let it show. I wasn't sure if he was referring to me, or if this was some random comment, but the look on my sister's face said it all. She tried to brush it off, but there was something in the way her voice trembled as she responded. "What do you mean by that, sweetie?" she asked, trying to keep her tone light. But there was an edge to her words that hadn't been there before. I could feel the change in the atmosphere, like a storm was building. My nephew didn't respond immediately, almost as if he was processing her reaction. Then, his gaze flickered to me again. "I don't know, it just seems like people do things for a reason. Like, maybe they want to get noticed, or maybe they just want to see if they can get away with it." He leaned back in his chair, clearly not realizing the weight of what he was saying. His words felt like they were aimed directly at me, but there was something in his tone that made it feel like he was talking about something bigger, something hidden beneath the surface. At this point, my mom chimed in, clearly uncomfortable. "Let's not make a big deal out of things, okay?" she said, trying to redirect the conversation, but the tension was palpable. I could see my sister's face flush with embarrassment, her eyes darting between me and her son, unsure of how to handle what was unfolding. It was clear that my nephew's words weren't just casual remarks, they were a spark that was igniting something much deeper, something that had been simmering beneath the surface for a long time. I felt like I was trapped in this strange, silent tug-of-war, caught between my nephew's cryptic comments and the family's unspoken tension. The more I tried to move past it, the more the mystery seemed to deepen. What exactly was he hinting at? Why did his words feel so loaded? And why was my sister acting so strange? It wasn't until later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, that I started to piece things together. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, trying to make sense of what had happened. My nephew's words were haunting me, and the more I thought about them, the more I realized that this wasn't just about me wearing a mini skirt. No, there was something else going on. Something my nephew knew, something he wasn't telling us. I could feel the walls closing in around me. This wasn't just a random awkward moment. This was the beginning of something much bigger. Something that would eventually shake everything I thought I knew about my family. But as the night wore on, I had no idea how deep this rabbit hole really went, or what I was about to uncover. The more I thought about it, the more unsettling the whole situation became. It wasn't just my nephew's awkward comment that was bothering me, it was the way everyone had reacted to it. My sister, usually so composed, had been strangely quiet after the dinner. She didn't even try to lighten the mood, which was her usual coping mechanism. And my mom, who usually intervened in any family drama, seemed to be keeping her distance too. There was something they weren't saying, something that felt off. But what was it? The next morning, I woke up early, unable to shake the lingering feeling of tension in the house. As I made my way into the kitchen, I found my sister sitting at the table, her coffee mug in hand but her eyes lost in thought. She didn't notice me at first, and I wasn't sure if I should speak up or just let it be. But the silence between us was unbearable. I decided to break it. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She glanced up, startled, and gave me a tight smile. "Yeah, just tired, I guess," she replied, but her voice lacked the usual warmth. I pressed a little further. "You've seemed a little off since last night. Is everything all right with you and, well, with him?" I gestured toward the living room where my nephew had been the night before, still lingering in my mind with that cryptic look. She didn't answer right away. She took a long sip of her coffee and stared out the window, almost like she was searching for something in the distance. "It's just been hard, you know? Things with him, with us, we're all a little on edge right now. There's a lot going on, and I'm just trying to hold it all together." Her words didn't make much sense at first, but there was something behind them. A layer of guilt or regret that she couldn't hide. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just about my nephew's strange comment. It felt like there was a much bigger issue at play, one that had been bubbling under the surface for a while. Before I could press her further, my nephew walked in, and his usual cocky attitude was gone. He looked almost defeated. His eyes didn't meet mine, and he slouched as he grabbed a cereal bowl. I noticed his hands were shaking slightly, and a knot formed in my stomach. I didn't understand what was going on, but I could feel the pressure building, and it was getting harder to ignore. I needed answers. There was no way I could just sit there and pretend like nothing had changed. I couldn't shake the feeling that my nephew knew something I didn't. Something that could unravel everything. The strange comment, his distant behavior, the way my sister had responded, everything was connected, and it all pointed towards something deeper. But what? What was I missing? What had happened that was so terrible, so secretive, that no one in the family was willing to talk about it? I couldn't shake the feeling that my nephew was on the edge of revealing something huge, something that could change everything. I knew one thing for sure, whatever it was, I wasn't going to be able to ignore it for much longer. The atmosphere in the house was heavy, thick with unspoken words and unresolved tensions. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to snap. My nephew had gone quiet again after breakfast, retreating to his room without saying much. My sister, still distant, hadn't spoken to him much either, and the uneasy silence between the two of them felt like a bomb just waiting to explode. I found myself pacing the living room, my thoughts racing. What could be the source of all this tension? Was it just my nephew's comment, or was there something deeper, something I wasn't seeing? The longer I stayed in this house, the more I realized I was tangled up in a mess that I wasn't prepared for. I needed to get to the bottom of it, but every time I tried to ask, the walls around my family seemed to grow higher. Then, just as I was about to give up, my nephew came into the room. He was holding his phone, and I saw the faintest hint of anxiety in his eyes. Without saying a word, he handed me the phone, and my heart skipped a beat when I saw what was on the screen. It was a video. A video of me, taken the previous afternoon, when I had walked into the room wearing the mini skirt. But this wasn't just any video. It was the moment when he'd made his awkward comment, the one that had left everyone on edge. But there was something else in the video. Something I hadn't noticed at the time. The way my sister had reacted, her face pale, her lips trembling. It wasn't just about my outfit, it was about something else. Something she was trying desperately to hide. I looked at my nephew, and for the first time, I saw the weight of what he was carrying. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. His eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of fear and something I couldn't place. "You have no idea what's really going on," he said softly, before turning and walking away, leaving me alone with the growing realization that I was about to uncover something that could shatter everything. I stood frozen, holding my nephew's phone in my hands, the video still playing on the screen. My mind was racing, the pieces of the puzzle slowly starting to click together, but I wasn't ready for what came next. I had assumed the tension between my nephew and me was just awkwardness about my outfit, something trivial that we could laugh off. But that video, combined with the expression on my sister's face the night before, told me it was far more serious than I had imagined. I was about to rewind the video when I felt the sudden urge to check the time. It was nearly noon. I looked around the room, trying to figure out what to do next. That's when I heard the doorbell ring, followed by a soft knock on the front door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and my immediate thought was that it was some kind of distraction. But when I opened the door, the shock I felt nearly knocked me back. Standing on the porch was someone I hadn't seen in years, someone I had completely forgotten about until that moment, my sister's ex-husband, David. David's presence was like a punch to the gut. He had disappeared from our lives after the messy divorce, and nobody in the family had spoken much about him since. His sudden appearance was unsettling, and yet, it made a twisted kind of sense. The tension in the house, my sister's strange behavior, my nephew's cryptic comments, none of it had added up until now. My sister's past, the things she had tried so hard to bury, were beginning to surface. David didn't waste time. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice calm but firm. "About everything." I felt my heart race. There it was. The thing I'd been missing. This was it, the piece of the story that would either make or break everything I thought I knew about my family. The stakes were higher now. What was he going to reveal, and how would it change everything? David stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room, and I could feel the weight of the unspoken history between us all. "You don't know the whole story," he said, his voice low but steady. "There are things about your sister things about all of us, that you don't understand. And it's time you did." My heart was pounding as I stood there, staring at him, trying to piece together what was happening. He wasn't here by accident. This wasn't a simple visit. The air was thick with the tension of old secrets, and I suddenly realized how much of our family's history had been buried, secrets that were now clawing their way to the surface. "David, what are you talking about?" I asked, my voice shaky but determined. "What are you trying to tell me?" David sighed, rubbing his forehead as if the words were hard to form. "It's about your sister's marriage, and the things that happened after we split up. Your nephew, he's not exactly who you think he is. He's been carrying something with him, something that I didn't know how to explain until now." My mind was reeling. What could he mean? And how was it connected to everything that had been happening lately? Before I could speak again, my nephew appeared in the doorway, his face pale. "You don't have to tell her," he muttered, his voice trembling. "I didn't want you to find out like this." David turned toward him, his expression softening. "You deserve to know the truth, son," he said quietly. The room went still. My nephew wasn't just David's son, he was mine too. The shock of his revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. Everything I thought I knew had just been flipped upside down. And the secrets my family had kept from me? They were just beginning to unravel. The room fell into a suffocating silence as my nephew's words echoed in my mind. He was mine too. The realization hit me like a flood, crashing over everything I thought I knew. I looked between David and my nephew, trying to process the weight of the truth. How had I not seen it before? The similarities in his eyes, the way he carried himself, it was all there, but it had been hidden from me for years. David spoke again, his voice softer now. I never wanted you to find out like this, but it's time. Your nephew deserves to know who he really is, and you deserve the truth about everything. His words weren't just a confession, they were a door opening to the past, one I hadn't been prepared to walk through. My nephew, still standing in the doorway, looked at me with a mix of fear and hope. I didn't want to hurt anyone, he said quietly. I didn't even know how to talk about it. It was a lot to take in, but as I looked at him, I understood. The confusion, the tension, it all made sense now. He'd been carrying a secret, a burden that no one had asked him to bear, and now everything was out in the open. There was no more pretending, no more running from the truth. As the silence stretched on, I felt a strange sense of relief. The lies had been stripped away. The mystery was gone. What was left now was the chance to rebuild, to understand each other for who we really were. We were family, bound by more than just blood. And in that moment, I realized that the secrets we kept had never been as powerful as the truth we now shared.